funky.
Good day, my kind village folk. I clearly chose an aesthetic today with my eyes and
Stuck to it.
Today's video is going to be hopefully a fun one. I've never done this video idea before. Whenever I'm not sure if I want to declutter a palette on the spot, but I do know that I need to maybe give it some trial runs before I finally get rid of it, I placed it on palette probation. Today I figured I would do a purgatory update and tell you guys what ended up staying that I put on palette probation and what ended up being decluttered. Spoiler alert, not many things stayed.
You wanna know what? No, I am gonna leave.
But before we start today's video, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is Skillshare. I'm super excited to announce that my second class is now live on Skillshare. Hello and welcome to my class. This is YouTube Content Creation Part 2, Business Management, Brand Deals, and Making Your Passion a Side Hustle. That is all you get. You have to go watch it. But as I'm sure you guys know, Skillshare has been a beloved partner on my channel for a long time. Skillshare is an online learning community where you can browse through thousands of online classes to learn literally any creative topic you want under the sun. I'm super proud to teach 2 classes on Skillshare now. So the first class I published in April was the basics of beauty content creation and what you need to get started. And my newest class is all about the business side of beauty YouTube. So if you want to learn about sponsorships, PR, brand deals, etc., you can go ahead and watch that class. It's basically like one of my chatty get ready with me videos, but in a class form on Skillshare. So my very own class is my class recommendation of the month, but besides my own class, I've also been watching a lot of bullet journaling classes, which are so relaxing for me to watch. I don't know why, but the first 1,000 people who use my link down below will get 2 months of Skillshare Premium free on me. Both of my classes are on Premium, so you can go ahead and watch my class if you would like to, or do whatever you want. I'm not your mom. So huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video, but also for letting me teach, because I love doing that. But that is all I have to say. Today's Dew Fairy of the day is Leah K. Thank you so much for having your bell on. Full details of this monstrosity of a look should be somewhere on Instagram, and without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to start with one of the few palettes in this video that hasn't been decluttered, so I actually have it still in person to show you guys. This is a palette that I've flirted many times with the idea of decluttering, but I just can't. I can't.
You can't get rid of me, bitch! I'm not going nowhere!
Given my realization last year that I don't like how darker eyeshadows look on myself, it seems weird that I still have this palette around. The thing is, I don't really use the Melt Smoke Sessions palette for doing eye looks on its own. I've only done one look using just this palette and only the colors in here. Most of the time whenever I dip in here, it's to get a certain shade in this palette, and that's really why I keep it, because God, I love it so much. I think the shimmers in here are just a tiny bit better than the ones in Gemini. Not to say that those are bad by any means. The Gemini palette, perfection. So if I'm doing an olive green look that's a little bit more on the warm tone side, a lot of the time I'll dip in here. This straight up almost bronze gold shade here called Gravity OG is one of my favorites for an all over golden lid, especially within a neutral look. This with kind of chocolatey browns. And then if I'm doing a kind of more minty green / forest green look, this section of the palette is amazing to go for. So I don't reach for this very often. That's why it was on palette probation for a while, but I've kind of concluded that at least for the time being, this does make me happy. But something I'm trying to work on right now is not feeling guilty keeping something that maybe doesn't get as much use if it does make me happy. And I think I've gotten into a good relationship with decluttering where I'm not just decluttering for the sake of getting rid of things for a video, but really just I don't want it anymore. And that is why Smoke Sessions still lives rent-free in my house and my brain. Hi, Molly. Hi, do you want to be in my video?
Yeah. Oh, you can't, she can't come up there.
She can't come up the stairs. I got a dog, guys. You don't get to see her though. She's old and she can't come up the stairs. Not as lucky as her sister, however, the Melt Blueprint stack. I got rid of that stack / palette, I want to say a year ago, for similar reasons that I've been thinking about getting rid of the Melt Smoke Sessions, but also because I didn't like the formula. It was definitely a very dark color dominated palette, especially with the mattes in there. There were really no mid-tone mattes. It was just a dark brown and blue. So I didn't get as much use out of that stack as I would have liked to, but also didn't really love the formula that much. I honestly think that the palette formulas from Melt are better, in my opinion. I know a lot of people feel the opposite way. I liked that they did 8 shades in the stack instead of the standard 4 in Melt stacks, because I feel like that is kind of a waste of money. That being said, didn't love the formula, did not get as much use out of it as I thought I would, and even though it was a half neutral stack / palette, I still felt like you couldn't really do a ton of different looks with it and get a lot of versatility because you didn't really have those mid-tone shades to balance it out. So Blueprint's been gone, and honestly have not missed her and have not thought about her. In my last eyeshadow palette declutter, so the one that I did at the beginning of quarantine actually, I believe I placed the Huda Beauty Desert Dusk palette into palette probation. That's gone now. Ultimately, this one for me came down to the fact that I really loved it while I had it. It's a beautiful warm tone palette, and it came out during that kind of renaissance of warm-toned, vaguely neutral palettes with some pops of pinks and purples. Like Modern Renaissance, Colored Rain, Queen of Hearts, kind of in that same ballpark. And it had those really beautiful textured duochrome shimmers and that one pressed glitter that was really beautiful. So I did like that palette a lot, and it was really my first introduction to Huda Beauty's eyeshadow formula, which I really enjoy. I think her bigger palettes are better than her like smaller Obsessions palettes, but still really good, solid, colorful eyeshadow formula. So because I'd loved it for so much and because it had been a holy grail for so long, I think I had a harder time getting rid of that one because I was like, I feel like getting rid of this would just like betray myself. But I use the new nude palette a lot more for kind of similar reasons that I did the Huda Beauty Desert Dusk. I really liked going for Desert Dusk for those really beautiful like foiled metallic shades in there, which I think the new nude does in some shades that are a lot more unique to my collection. So Desert Dusk left the chat a long time ago. I thought I was gonna miss that palette, but honestly, have not, and it's been like 3 months. This was one that I waffled back and forth a long time on, but the Jouer Skinny Dip Foil palette. It was an all shimmer palette of, I want to say like 6, maybe 7 metallic shades. Those were some of the most beautiful glittery metallic shades I had in my collection. Very foiled, as the name would imply, and also kind of more on the cool tone side, so I didn't have a ton of shimmers like that in my collection. Most of the eye looks I do are warm toned, though I don't hate cool tones by any means, but I didn't really have a lot of neutral, cool toned shimmer shades in my collection. So that palette, even though I love the metallic formula, never really got a ton of use. I'd actually like full on decided to declutter that palette one time. I listed it on Poshmark. I like got this close to selling it, and then I was like, oh my god, but like what if I need a silver in my life? So that one went in and out of palette probation, but eventually I was like, you're not gonna use it, so stop. I rarely go into all shimmer palettes just for a dedicated lid shade. Most of the time I like using whatever I have in the palette that I'm using on my lids. Another one of the few that are still here, the ABH Norvina palette. This I could still see myself decluttering at some point, but right now I'm really enjoying it, and mostly just for the shimmers in here. But I went through a period last year where I just kind of fell out of love with this one. I wasn't using it. Whenever I reach for an Anastasia palette, I would reach for either Modern Renaissance or Soft Glam. I feel like this is kind of similar vibes to Modern Renaissance. It still has this kind of like berry toned neutrals as well as some purples in here. So honestly, whenever I wanted these kinds of vibes, I would just go for Modern Renaissance. I do think that the shimmer formula in here is insanely good. I've heard it's very similar to the ugly ass cool tone sultry palette. I don't love the mattes in here. Some of the shades in here have a kind of like satiny finish instead of a true matte formula, so don't love that. And for that reason, I don't see this being like a forever palette for me, but I do enjoy having these really high impact metallics right now. So Norvina palette is still kicking, but technically kind of still on palette probation because she still's got the sticky note on the back. So this one is one I truly cannot believe I ever considered getting rid of, and that is
I love you, bitch.
Yeah. Master Palette by Mario. I think the only reason I considered getting rid of this one seriously was because at the time I was like, oh, it's limited edition, I can't talk about it on my channel. Bullshit. But I'm so glad I didn't get rid of it for that reason, because I truly love this one, and if I just got rid of it because I couldn't talk about it on YouTube, I don't really believe in getting rid of limited edition things just because I can't talk about them on a video if I genuinely still love the product and it still performs really well. So I don't know what I was thinking. This is like one of my favorite neutral palettes in my collection. For a time, both of my Ace Beauté Paradise palettes were on palette probation, and neither of them are here anymore, so what does that tell you? The first one I put on probation was the Paradise Fallen palette. That was beautiful. That was such a beautiful palette, such a unique color scheme. All these kind of dark grungy purples and navies, very cool toned as well. And I haven't seen any color schemes like that come from a lot of brands. So that palette was very special to me. I didn't love the shimmer formula though, so I never really used the shimmers in there. The mattes were all very dark colors, obviously, and I have to be in a particular mood to use dark eyeshadows, so I really never got a ton of use out of that one. And also, just like when I decided to do a purple eye look, I had like 10 other palettes I'd reach for before that one. So that one was on probation for like a month before I decided to get rid of it. The Classical Paradise, however, that was hard for me because I just felt like that was the quintessential like fall color scheme. Very rich warm tones. I loved the looks I got out of that one. Even though this is California and the palm trees don't turn like orange or anything. That would be weird. Except when they're polluted. I still like to pretend sometimes that we get seasons here, so Yeah, I'm pretty sure I decluttered it because I had Colourpop Good Sport, which I no longer have anymore, but I also got this, which is the Kaleidos Futurism 4 Neon palette. I feel like the Melt Vita palette also looks very similar. So once I realized like you can create those same exact looks using other palettes and you have formulas that you like better, that one was also pretty easy to get rid of. I think I was just attached to the idea of it being like the quintessential fall palette. The Pat McGrath Mothership 2 was a toughie to even place on palette probation, and I only did it because I realized you only use 3 of the shades in here. That palette, as much as I loved it and as much as that metallic formula was so special, it was very much a waste of money because like 4, I think, of the shades in there were these kind of like weird satin shades that weren't shimmers, so you couldn't really use them as shimmer shades, but also were not mattes. And I don't like using kind of like satiny shimmers in the crease. There are no rules to that, but I just don't like how it looks on my eyes. So I didn't use like 4 of the shades in there, so that's already like a good $45 out of the window. But beautiful formula, but I have many other dark browns and blacks in my collection that I really love as well. The metallic formula, that was difficult for me to get rid of, but at that point I was like, I'm not using like 70% of the palette, so might as well. I still sometimes think about that gold in my dreams, but everything else, have not missed it. I, over the period of maybe like a year and a half after doing my vault collection review, ended up decluttering all of my vault collection palettes. I actually didn't hate my vault. I think I got a pretty decent formula, but those palettes really did nothing special for my life. The hardest one to get rid of by far though was the Dark Magic palette, just because that I felt like was actually very unique, whereas the other ones looked like regurgitated parts of the original Jaclyn Hill palette. Dark Magic looked very unique. There were some kind of overlapping shades from the like bottom row of the Jaclyn Hill palette, but besides that, really cool concept for a palette. I got rid of it because, say it with me, I don't like dark eyeshadow myself. Also, I wanted to keep it because it had a navy blue in there and I don't have a ton of navy blues in my collection, so I was like, maybe just keep this palette in probation for now. So that stayed on palette probation for about 2 months, maybe 3 months, until I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna touch that ever again. Palette probation in that way is kind of like when I depot eyeshadows. There's an 80% chance I'm never gonna touch it again. You know? I mentioned it earlier, but the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette, I was kind of flip-flopping back and forth on whether I wanted to get rid of it for a while. Same reasons I got rid of the Desert Dusk, except I decluttered the Queen of Hearts about a year beforehand. I loved it a lot during the kind of renaissance of warm tone neutral eyeshadow palettes where that kind of color story was just revolutionary, and I love the formula. I think Colored Rain has one of the best indie brand formulas by far for eyeshadows. I would say it goes for me like Kaleidos, Odin's Eye, Colored Rain. Seriously, one of the best formulas, so even though I don't have a Colored Rain palette right now, I would definitely love to buy another one in the future. And last but not least, I don't think she's going anywhere anytime soon because I just keep falling in love with this palette every time I reuse it again. But for a bit of time, Naked Heat was almost gonna be decluttered. That's the thing, I'll go through periods with this palette where I'll like not use it for a couple months. I'll forget how good it is. I'll be like, why do you still have that palette from like 2016? I'll resolve that I'm gonna be decluttering it by the end of the month if I don't use it again, and then I'll touch it on the last day and be like, wow, shit's amazing. Honestly, still one of my favorite palettes. I do prefer Naked Honey just a tiny bit more, but this is very, very good. Alright guys, that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much again to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Whoever chooses to go watch my class on Skillshare, thank you so much for supporting. Means a ton to me. But if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed down below. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and the tickety talk. And if you made to the very end of this video, you get the bonus meme. I have to go do homework now. I love you. Bye.
You can't get rid of me, bitch.